This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. It's been a while, but I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin Barry, trainer of Joseph Parker, Guido Vianello, UMAR Salamov. Am I missing anybody out?
No, that's my team.
That's your team so far. How are you?
Great to see you, Rob. Hey, mate, I'm doing good. But great to see you. And firstly, just let me say on behalf of our team that we are sorry to hear about your recent loss in your family. And we love you. You're a great guy. And our prayers and wishes are with you.
Thank you very much, Kev. That's very kind of you to say. I do appreciate it. And yes, it's very much appreciated at this time. And I do miss you guys and look forward to the next time that we can be reunited in Las Vegas.
In the gym together.
Yeah, in the gym, definitely in the gym, and definitely nowhere that we shouldn't be for anybody who's listening to this. But yeah, it'll be great to see you soon. But no, thank you very much for that, Kev. I do appreciate that.
Mate, I'm just so you know, I'm sitting here in Christchurch with my wife Tanya and son Taylor, and we are day 8 of quarantine since arriving in New Zealand. In 6 days' time, we'll be jumping on the plane, flying back to Auckland, and I'll be starting Joseph Parker's training camp on the 22nd of October. And that training camp will go for 7 weeks, and we've got a big fight coming up on December the 11th.
You certainly do. A big fight indeed. And it's been a fight that's been a long time in the making. I mean, the junior Fara and Joseph Parker go right back to the amateurs together as soon as they turned over as professionals. It's always been in the background. How big is this fight in your part of the world in New Zealand?
Well, this is a blockbuster fight in New Zealand, and we consider ourselves, firstly, very, very lucky to be able to stage a fight of this significance. And it has the significance for a variety of reasons. Firstly, you mentioned the history. The two guys fought 4 times in the amateurs. Junior won the first fight. Joe won fights 2 and 3. And the 4th fight that had the most at stake was for a position in the Oceania team to travel to the Olympics. Junior Fara beat Joe. So when it mattered the most, Junior Fara got the win. Joe was very bitterly disappointed in not being able to partake in the Olympic experience and turn professional. As we know, 4 years into his professional career, Joe fought Andy Ruiz for the WBO heavyweight title in Auckland and became the 4th youngest heavyweight champion of all time, which went a long way to forgetting the disappointments of missing out on the Olympics. But always in the back of his mind, he knew, there was a score to settle with Junior Fara. In 2016, 4 years into Joe's professional career, Junior Fara had been watching Joe, had been watching his success, had been watching his profile blow up. And he thought, gosh, I'd fought this guy 4 times. I'd looked at him in the eyes, and he made the transition to the professional game 4 years after Joe. So I think we knew at that stage, providing Junior got off to a good start in his career, they followed a similar path to what we did with Joe. He's now 19-0. He's number 6 in the world with the WBO. We knew that if those things were to happen and present itself, that one day that was going to be a very big fight in New Zealand. Did we think it was going to happen in 2020? No, we didn't. But who ever thought that we were going to end up with a world pandemic that was going to change things for everyone? And really, with Joe and Junior, both here in Auckland, New Zealand, both unable to travel. Joe was very, very fortunate that we were able to have that DAZN matchroom fight in February of this year against Shaundell Winters. Junior hasn't fought this year, so both guys in their camps realized there was no option in the US for them. There was no option in the UK for them. And the only option for both guys and their team was to make this fight happen and make it happen now. And as you know, Rob, New Zealand is probably the only country in the world at the moment that has full crowds. You know, we had an All Black rugby test last week in Wellington between New Zealand and Australia with 40,000 people. We have another one this weekend. You know, Joe and Junior in Spark Arena in Auckland will have a full house of 14, 15,000 people. So all the stars were aligned for this fight. And the boxing fans in New Zealand, the sporting fans, just the general public in New Zealand are very excited about the possibilities and the potential of this blockbuster fight.
Just go back a little bit and talk about the amateur fights that we've discussed there. Obviously, a number of years ago now. Since then, Joseph Parker has gone on to become world champion. He's headlined other pay-per-view events. He's boxed all around the world. How much are you thinking, or how much is Joe thinking back to those amateur fights? Obviously, the amateur game and the pro game, two completely different kettles of fish. How much, I mean, I'm assuming for Joe, it will always somewhat be in the back of his mind, as you've said, but how much are you basing on those amateur fights?
No, I think more than anything else, it is definitely going to help us with the promotion of this fight. Mm. We both know that amateur and professional are two totally different sports. You know, for a start off, you've got 3 rounds in the amateurs, you've got head guard, you've got bigger gloves. You know, we've got 12 rounds for this fight. We've got small professional gloves. And Joseph Parker is a totally different athlete 8 years into his professional career. You know, he is battle hardened now. He's had some very big fights, some of those have been life and death fights, like the Carlos Takam fight, the Andy Ruiz fight. Then he's had the blockbuster fights with Anthony Joshua, Hughie Fury, Dillian White, Dimitrenko. We've had big fights. Joe is the guy with all the big names on his resume. Joe's the guy who made the transition from the amateur ranks to the professional ranks with 5 stars. So, you know, and because of that, Joe is the favorite for this fight and deserves to be. But being the favorite also comes with a lot of pressure. Like, the pressure is all on Joseph Parker in this fight, not on Junior Fara. Junior Fara sitting there at number 6 in the world, Joseph Parker sitting there at number 3 with the WBO. This fight has major significance with the WBO, especially the way things are planning out at the moment with the talk of Anthony Joshua walking away from the WBO belt. So the implications for the victor in this fight are huge.
Talk to me a little bit about your preparations, KB. Obviously, Joseph Parker is based in Las Vegas. Usually, Las Vegas is up there with one of the best places in the world for sparring. What's it going to be like in New Zealand? Obviously, your sparring partners are not going to be, you know, as easily available as they were if you were back in your gym in Las Vegas.
No, 100%. That was always my biggest major concern, was the sparring. And we know that Junior Fara comes from a gym here in Auckland that has a lot of very good fighters in kickboxing and boxing and UFC. He has, you know, world-class sparring there. And when we decided that there was no other option other than to have the training camp in New Zealand, the sparring was always going to be my major issue. But we've had a couple of discussions of late, and we've been able to secure 2 or 3 very reputable sparring partners that I'm sure are going to be sufficient for us to get to have Joe in tip-top shape by December 11. As you see, I didn't use any names or anything like that. But you know, we're speaking with a guy called David Nika, who's a 2-time Commonwealth gold medalist, 6'5", very good pedigree fighter. He's already qualified for the Olympics. We have a very good relationship with him, and I believe that he will test Joe as the main sparring partner. He's also going to fight on the card on December the 11th.
Yeah, I knew that you didn't mention any names. I didn't know whether or not you wanted to. I know that you're
Well,
no
that's one
newcomer to
name.
the
That's
game.
one name. I'll throw one name out there.
Okay, you got to give me something, right? You mentioned the pressure being on Joseph Parker in this fight, and I agree with you. I think it's fair to say, considering the names that you've mentioned, the achievements that he's had, how damaging would a defeat potentially be in this fight for Joseph Parker?
Oh, look, it would be huge for us, and it's something that is obviously always in the back of our mind. And as I mentioned to you earlier, when in the amateurs, when the pressure was on the most, when the stakes were the highest, when it was a position in the team to go to the Olympics, Junior beat Joe. Now, the stakes could not be higher in this fight, where the winner of this fight, with number 3 and number 6 fighting each other, the winner will be one fight away from potentially fighting for the WBO World Heavyweight title. So the stakes, again, are very, very high. We understand that. Joe knows that a slip up here, it'll be a very hard slog to get back into title contention. At the age of 28, Joe is physically peaking right now. The best thing for Joe about this whole pandemic is that I remember sitting down and having a discussion with him after the fight in February I think it was February 27, before he was flying back home. The plan was to go home for 6 weeks, spend time with your friends and family and your beautiful little girls, and then come back, and we were looking to fight in May. This was the year that we were going to make up for some lost ground last year, and we were going to stay very, very active. And we were hoping that staying active would put us in at that stage, we were sitting at number 2, would put us in a position to fight for the world title. What I said to Joe, when you go home, you have to stay in shape. I want you taking some time off, but you can't just stop. We have to be ready now to step up when an opportunity presented itself. And that opportunity could be a fight falling over, a big fight opponent becoming injured. We have to be able to jump in at 3 or 4 weeks notice and take that opportunity. And he understood that. So he got straight on a strength program, a very heavy strength, an explosive power program that he's always wanted to do. Once the world went into shutdown and he realized that he wasn't going to be coming back to Vegas anytime soon, he kept doing that strength program, and he's been on that for the last 6 months. So what I do, I find myself now with a fighter who's physically very, very strong and very powerful. He's very thick. I don't know if you've seen photos. He's very thick in the chest. He's thick in the shoulders and in the back. And this is something that we've been wanting to do for a long time, but something like that doesn't just happen overnight, and it takes a lot of hard work. So as I mentioned before, I'm starting the training camp in Auckland on October 22nd. When I fly back to Auckland, I'm walking into the gym with a fighter who's in very good shape. He's 2 kilograms over his fighting weight. So we've got 7 weeks to work on our boxing skill, our game plan, and everything in regards to having Joe in the best physical, mental, and emotional shape to take care of business on December the 11th.
Final one on Joseph Parker. You make a good point there about having some time to rest and some time to also obviously stay in shape and work on things that he wanted to and didn't have the time to. How important has it been, and how pleasing is it for you that he now has had an extended period of time at home? Every time I come to Las Vegas, he's always got another kid on the way, or another kid's just been born and he's just got to go into fight and have a camp. He's had a prolonged period at home now, which is not something that he's had for a long time. How rewarding is that for you to see for Joe?
Well, he hasn't, let's be real, he hasn't had it for the last 8 years. The last 8 years he's been spending most of the time every year with me in Las Vegas. And, he's been every bit a part of my family. He flew his daughters and his lovely wife over for the last training camp. and it was something that, you know, because he found it so difficult to be away from them. So the fact that he could be here with them, I was very pleased about that. And I think it was very, very good for Joe as a person and a father and a man to have his family around him. This will be the first time in the 8 years that Joe and I have been together that we're actually doing a training camp, a full training camp in New Zealand. We've done 2-3 week training camps, but never anything like this. And look, it's exciting. He's got systems in place here now, and he had to do that because, you know, we had all the systems in place in Vegas, and when he couldn't get over there, you know, he's got a very good TRX coach. He's got very good strength coach. He's got, you know, physio, neuromuscular physician. He's got a very good doctor, a masseuse. So all the things that we had in place, he is put in place in New Zealand, and that's a matter because he had to do that. So that we've been able to keep him in tip-top shape throughout this. He's been able to get his recovery work in. He's been able to fix little niggles. And that, look, Rob, the other big obvious thing for me, and I think for a lot of coaches around the world, is that they find themselves with a team of fighters, and usually those fighters are carrying injuries for some of them for most of their career, and they're niggling injuries that never really ever go away. And what you find yourself doing is maintaining them and managing them and preventing them from becoming worse, but they're always there. And I think this inactivity in the professional boxing world has given a lot of professional fighters a chance to actually to reboot their careers and heal and recover from some of these niggling injuries that they've been dealing with their whole professional career. And I know there's a lot of fighters like that out there who, sure, no fighter wants to not be fighting because that's their profession, but the upside is a lot of them have recovered from those niggling injuries because of the time out of the ring.
Moving on to Junior Far. In this part of the world, not too many people will have seen Junior Far. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are watching this interview who haven't seen Junior Far fight as of yet. I'm sure they will before the fight, and if not, they will do December the 11th. What type of fighter is Junior Far? What are you preparing for, without, of course, giving too much away of your game plan?
Look, Junior's a big, strong guy. 6'5", 265 pound. 80-inch reach, so he's going to have height and reach and size over Joe. He hasn't fought the caliber of opponents that Joseph Parker has fought. He's now 4 years into his professional boxing career, and the time is here now for him to have a career-defining fight. I remember when Joe was in his 4th year as a professional, and when Joseph Parker was 19-0, the same record that Junior Far finds himself with now. We fought Joseph Parker in a very big step-up fight against a very dangerous, a very well-known, a very creditable fighter by the name of Carlos Takam. Joe was 19-0, Carlos Takam was 33-2. Carlos Takam was one of the baddest men in the heavyweight division. Also one of the most avoided. The fight was for the #1 position in the IBF. So the stakes were very high. You knew that it was for the IBF, not the WBO, correct?
I do. I remember. We've spoken about it.
All right.
I remember the fight. I won money on the fight.
The fight was a life and death fight. But, we got it done towards the end in a very close decision. Now, here we are 4 years later with Junior Far being 19-0, being asked to step up and fight the biggest fight of his career against the 27-2, 21 KO Joseph Parker. the former world WBO heavyweight champion who defended the title twice, the guy who's been in with some of the biggest names in the sport, the guy who's talked about in everybody's top 5 or 6 heavyweights in each division. So this is Junior's chance to step up like what Joseph Parker did in the 4th year of his professional career when he was 19-0. Quite ironic the way things work out, but that's it. Look, the scary thing for me is I know that we haven't seen the best of Junior Fara. Junior Fara is still work in progress. If you just looked at the people that he's fought, that's not really going to tell you a lot. But you know, he's got 19 victories. He's been wanting to test himself. He tested himself in the amateurs against the best in the world. He fought Usyk in the amateurs. You know, he fought Ajagba in the amateurs. So he fought, you know, he's fought some of the best amateurs in the world when he was in the amateur game. Here's a guy who's been waiting for the opportunity to show not only his team and his family and the people in New Zealand, but the boxing world, what he is about. And so the stakes could not be any higher for this fight on November the 11th, Rob.
December the 11th.
Yes, if we fight November the 11th, it'll be a month early.
Someone's going to be fighting on November.
It'll be a very short training camp.
You'll still be in quarantine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Moving from one of your heavyweights to another, Guido Vianello. We saw him return to action a few weeks ago. Tough night for Guido Vianello, I think it's fair to say. Got a draw against Kingsley Ube. Talk to us a little bit about his performance.
Surprisingly tough night. You know, Kingsley was very awkward, very difficult. And Guido, look, he had a really hard night at the office. It wasn't his best work, was a little flat on the night. Everything that we trained to do in the training camp was working off the double jab. We knew that Kingsley pulled away from the first jab and would come back with a counter. You know, Guido decided he was going to throw one jab. I must have asked him 500 times during the previous 6 weeks not to let this guy into the middle zone. I said, the only chance this guy's ever got of touching you is if you allow him into the middle zone. So everything we did was working from the outside, where Guido could use his 6'6" and his long arms. He never really, you know, he never really followed the game plan. Of course, in the second round, we sustained a very, very bad cut over his eye that required 15 stitches after the fight. Thank God I had Stitch Duran, the world's leading cut man, in the corner with me, or it would have been very, very difficult to get through the 6 rounds. Look, after a slow start, you know, Guido got into his work. He won the second half of the fight. You know, I felt quite comfortably. The cut made it look really bad with the blood and the bruising. I believe that he will learn more from this fight than any fight previously in his career. He's had a lot of quick knockouts. This is the fight that, you know, the challenge for him now will be how he comes back from a fight like this. He assures me, you know, we had several long talks after the fight before he flew back to Rome, sending messages to me, promising me this will never, ever happen again. He'll never, ever be hit with punches in a fight like that. And I believe in myself. I'm going to hold you to that promise, Guido. I know the talent that he possesses. It just wasn't there on display that night. And I think without making excuses, after the eye was cut, I think he found that it was a new experience for him in the professional game, you know, bleeding badly like that. He found it hard to conduct and follow the game plan, which is something that, you know, he's going to have to learn and develop if he's going to take the next step up in the professional division.
You make a good point there about the fact that he is, it's relatively early still in his professional career. It's not easy to deal with your first cut as a fighter, of course. One thing that I'd also like to talk to you about, you mentioned there about not letting Kingsley get into that middle zone and get shots off. Now, I know that one of the things that you've been working on specifically with Guido is having him fight tall, fight big. I know the name that we've used in conversation is Klitschko, that kind of fighting like a big man, whereas obviously he came from Abel Sanchez, who trains fighters a slightly different way, I think it's fair to say. Is that what we're seeing? Are we sort of seeing him trying to develop into that big, tall, long fighter?
Look, that is exactly what we've been trying to implement, and he's been showing us that in the previous fights, even though they have been short fights. It was funny because I had members of Guido's team sort of say to me that they felt he went back to his early style once he got cracked a couple of times, and he wasn't fighting like a big man and he wasn't getting in behind his double jab. He went back to the style of fighting that he was used to, and that is not going to work, and that is not going to give you a long career in the heavyweight division. If you're going to stand there in the middle zone with powerful guys like Kingsley Ibe.
What's the plan next for Guido? Obviously, he's gone home. We're still kind of at the mercy of everything. What's the plan for him moving forwards?
Well, God, we had great plans for him this year. In fact, if you remember, right at the beginning of 2020, we were flying to Canada to fight Devin Vargas. That was going to be a nice little step up fight for us. And the ironic thing about it, of course, that never happened. In fact, Guido was listed to fight 4 times this year and ended up having 2 fights. The last fight of this year was supposed to be a homecoming fight in Rome over 10 rounds. So we're looking forward to that happening sometime next year. He'll come back to me. Well, the plan, if the world behaves itself, the plan is he comes back to me early January, and we get him back in the ring sometime early March, and we get we move him into his first 8-round contest. With the cut had healed well. He's been seeing his doctors in Italy. I think one of the stitches had a slight infection. He was talking about going and seeing a plastic surgeon. So we want to, we're going to do the right thing by the cut. We're going to make sure it's not going to be an ongoing problem moving forward. But look, next year we're looking to build him into a 10-round fighter. That'll start with, as I mentioned before, his first 8-rounder in March, maybe 2 8-rounders, and then straight into 10 rounds. But we definitely, we don't want too many more wars like that early in his career. He's 26 years old. He's still developing. He's got a lot to learn. But when you mention Klitschko, that is the perfect way that someone like Guido should be operating and controlling. It's not about Guido. He came into that last fight 7-0, 7 KOs, and he was trying to knock everyone out. And he sort of got hit in that first round of the fight, and he thought, I'm going to stand there and knock you out. And of course, it came unstuck for him. So, we have to be a little bit smarter than that. He has to be a little bit smarter. And I believe moving forward, we'll see a fighter who won't be trying to entertain as a preference. He'll be trying to entertain with his skill from the safety area of the outside.
And as you mentioned, it's not always the worst thing in the world to have those types of fights or those types of tests at that stage of your career. But as you also mentioned, you don't want too many of those. Don't want to add unnecessary miles to the clock early in your career. Moving on, the final member of Team Barry, Umar Salamov. I've been waiting for him to box in this 4-man box-off for the £175 WBO title for, I don't know, Kev, like a year? How long has it been?
God, it's been really, really frustrating for our team and also for Umar. We couldn't get Umar into the country. He hasn't been able to since going back to Chechnya after I signed him with Bob Arum and Top Rank at the beginning of the year. He hasn't been able to come back to train because of the border restraints. We were hoping that things would free up by the end of the year for him and Vlasov to come to the US to fight, but neither of them could get into the country. So we've taken another option, and the two of them are fighting in St. Petersburg on November the 20th for the other half of the equation, to fight Joe Smith for the WBO 175-pound title. Both guys are training really, really hard. My partner and friend Oleg Bogdanov is, he gives me constant updates. Oleg was very instrumental in being able to put this fight together for the two guys in St. Petersburg. Because the other option was, if we were going to wait for an opportunity for that to be fought here, fought in the US on a top-ranked card and on ESPN, it would have to wait till sometime next year. And I'm sure that, the Top Rank and also Joe Smith's people, they want to get in and fight for the title. So there's a big fight coming up, a big fight that I'll be here in camp with Joseph Parker, and we'll be anxiously awaiting. I would have loved nothing more than to been able to be there and have Umar in our gym for the training camp and the lead up to the biggest fight of his career. Like, Umar's now, he's 25-1, 19 KOs, still a very young guy. Vlasov, extreme, 45-3, very, very experienced. He's been around a long time. He's fought for world titles at cruiserweight, light heavyweight, super middleweight. When we talked about awkward styles with Kingsley Ibe, I don't think anyone has a style as awkward as Maxim Vlasov. He sort of fights in a kung fu style, which is totally different than, I'm sure you've seen him before, Rob.
Yeah, I've seen him before.
It's different from any other fighter. So I think it's going to be very important for Umar to use his youth, to use his power. And he understands that this is a big fight for him. But the winner of this fight fights Joe Smith for the 175-pound WBO world title, which is a huge fight, because the light heavyweight's a big division, and the winner of that belt will go into a multi-world title fight.
That was the situation the last time we spoke about Umar Salamov, but I think at the time that we last spoke, that was going to be the situation going to St. Petersburg, but I didn't think that there was a date. So that's that's frustrating for you, though, as his trainer. And how have you? I mean, obviously you mentioned kind of being in constant contact, but it's not going to be the same, surely. What types of things have you been able to do, or bits to give him to work on while you've had to, he's preparing remotely?
Obviously we're giving him a lot of support. We're keeping in contact, especially my son Taylor has a lot of contact with Umar. Occasionally I'll get on three-way Zoom with Umar, a translator, Oleg, and myself. We're making sure that he has everything in training camp that he needs. We're bringing new sparring partners. In fact, I was talking to Oleg yesterday about we're bringing new sparring partners in. So, all we're doing is we're being the support for him. It's very hard with the language barrier for me to be technical with him. I've tried a couple of times through some of Umar's friends who are translating, but it's very difficult. But the one thing I will say about Umar Salamov is, like, he's an intelligent fighter. He's been a professional for a long time. He's worked with a lot of coaches. He's worked with a lot of very good fighters. He spent a bunch of time with Usyk and Klitschko. In fact, the first time I ever met him, as a light heavyweight, he was sparring Klitschko. So he's fearless. and very strong. And he's a very, very big light heavyweight. You know, at 6'3.5", he's a big guy. He is, you know, he's always wanted this opportunity, and now it's in front of him. And I think we'll see the very best that he has to offer.
Must be difficult to work through a translator, Kev. Your English isn't that good.
My proper English.
Oh, what was that? It's starting to sound like me. You're talking to
Oh,
me
well,
too
see,
much.
well, Tanya and I have been watching. We've been watching The Crown on Netflix. So I've been improving my English, Rob.
You might want to work on that, mate, before I next get back to the gym, huh? I'll give you some lessons in the Queen's English, my friend.
Good on you, mate.
Okay, before I let you go, let's just touch on a few little bits and pieces. You mentioned Alexander Usyk's name several times throughout here. He is going to be, if not the person, then certainly somebody floating around in that WBO mix, obviously being the mandatory challenger for what we assume could well become a vacant WBO title at some point in 2021. But before then, he boxes Derek Chisora on October the 31st. What do you make of that fight?
Good fight. You know, the brawler against the boxer. You know, a lot of people are looking at the Chaz Witherspoon fight. Of course, Usyk's first step up to heavyweight, and he looked very, very ordinary. He looked everything except for the mandatory challenger in the WBO. I didn't read too much into that. It was his first fight with adding a lot of weight. His body was still making the adjustment. I look at Usyk, and I'm a big fan of Usyk. I thought he was a tremendous cruiserweight, one of the most skillful cruiserweights of all time. I look at his team. He's got a very, very smart boxing team with a lot of experience. There is no way sitting there in the mandatory position that they would be looking at fighting a flat-footed Derek Chisora if they didn't think that this was a very easy fight for them. If they thought it was a difficult fight, there was no reason to take it. You know, we're talking about they have a potential, before the movements, the recent movements in the division, they had a fight with Joshua that was going to be worth millions and millions of dollars. You would not gamble that if you weren't 100% sure in the skill set and the ability of your fighter to easily beat Derek Chisora. And I think even with the resurgence in the last couple of years of Chisora's like been reinvented. You know, he's had some great fights, some exciting fights, but mate, styles make fights. And you know, I look at the style of Usyk, and I think it's a very big boxing lesson for him in that fight.
Now, obviously, without over divulging your vast knowledge of the sport, and obviously for somebody who's potentially going to be an opponent for Joseph Parker, all being well on December the 11th at some point in the near future, what's going to be the game plan, or what would be the advice that you would give to somebody like a Derek Chisora? Something you've mentioned, the boxer versus the brawler. Does he have to just get in there and get in his face and make it as uncomfortable as he possibly can?
Oh, mate, obviously there's no way that he can box. You know, who have we ever seen Derek Chisora right throughout his career? Who have we ever seen him try and box? You know, the success that Chisora's had is by being relentless, of bobbing and weaving, moving forward, throwing bombs to both sides. You know, he needs to take the fight to Usyk. He needs to take, if he has the ability to do it, and the style to do it, he needs to put pressure on Usyk from the very first bell. He needs to make him so uncomfortable and just keep breaking down the body. That has to be his game plan. Because if he waits and tries to box and land a punch from the distance on a fighter like Usyk, it'll never ever happen. We know that Chisora doesn't have the greatest footwork in boxing, and we do know that Usyk moves pretty damn well and pretty slick on his feet.
Yeah, he's not bad. He's a good dancer. Have you seen the videos of him dancing?
Yeah, he likes to dance.
He does like to
Yeah.
dance. He's a good dancer. Another fight that we've got coming up back end of
Maybe
the
him and Joe
year.
can do a dance off at some stage.
Who him? To be, yeah, Joe's got some moves. To be fair,
Yeah,
Joe
Joseph
has
Parker's
got some
got some
moves.
moves, all right.
He certainly does. Another fight that we've got coming up on these shores, just been announced. Again, somebody in that mix around the WBO title mix. Daniel Dubois versus Joe Joyce. Obviously, Joe Joyce works with Sam Jones, who works with Guido Vianello. It's always the way with boxing. You can always link somebody to somebody else for about 2 or 3 different people. What do you make of that fight? That's that's getting a lot of love over here and a lot of hype. Daniel Dubois versus Joe Joyce, a battle of Britain.
I tell you what, that's a massive UK fight, and you know what? It has a lot of significance to Joseph Parker fighting Junior Fara in a massive down under Australasian fight. Now, we know that that Joe Joyce had a stellar amateur career and probably stayed in the amateurs far too long. We also know that his team of Sam Jones and Adam Morley have done an amazing job to move him and choose quality world-class opponents for him through his short career. We also know that he's been on a fast track from the get-go because of his age. Watching Daniel Dubois, we know that he's a young guy who is developing, he's getting better, his skills are improving. We know that he's very powerful, but we also know that he hasn't fought anyone of the experience level of Joe Joyce. He hasn't fought anyone with the resilience of Joe Joyce. He hasn't fought anyone, I don't believe, with the size of Joe Joyce. Now, these guys, it's funny because we talk about Junior Fara and Joseph Parker having history. These guys have a lot of history. They've sparred a lot of rounds in the amateurs, before Dubois actually learned how to fight. This is what makes it such a tremendous British fight. It's a great fight for the British fans. It's also a great fight for the boxing fans, and it's a fight that I'm very interested in watching, and I'm very, very interested with the outcome of this fight because 2 months ago, Daniel Dubois leapfrogged Joseph Parker, and he went from 3 to 2 with the WBO, and Joe went down to 3. So, I will be watching this fight very, very closely, and I will be hoping with all my breath that Joe Joyce puts Daniel Dubois to sleep, so that Joseph Parker moves back into the number 2 position.
Is that
that's a bit mean. That's a bit mean, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not.
I don't know.
That's
hey,
okay.
I don't know Daniel Dubois. I tell you what, but I have watched him, and I thought, and I'm really impressed with the job his team have done. I've seen his last 2 or 3 fights, and he is getting better. He is powerful. He hits very, very hard. But when you hit somebody and they don't fall over, I'll be interested to see how he goes in the deep water if Joe Joyce can take him into the second half of the fight.
Now, if you were going to bet me 1 pint of beer at a Las Vegas...
I know you drink. Hey, I know you drink more than 1 pint of beer, Rob.
If you were going to bet me a pint at a Las Vegas bar of your choosing on who would win that fight, who would you bet on?
Oh, well, you see, you put me on the spot there.
Oh, that's okay.
Because hey, Sam Jones and Adam Morley are my guys. And because of that, I'm not going to judge, and I like Joe Joyce, so I'll be rooting for Joe in that fight, even with the power that Dubois possesses. The only thing I will say is, Joe's last fight, I was very concerned with the right hands that he got hit with. I said to both guys I just mentioned, Adam and Sam, I said, for God's sake, you've got to get his hands up. You know, you've got to tuck that chin inside the shoulders. You don't want, you know, Daniel Dubois landing the same right hands that you just got hit with in this fight, even though he bulldozed. I'm just trying to think of who he fought. Was it Christian Hammer?
Michael Wallish.
Michael Wallish. You know, he destroyed him in 3 rounds, but Wallish landed punches that he should never, ever have been allowed to land. And that was a concern for me.
Kevin Barry, always a pleasure. And I'm not just saying that, as you know, and as anybody who watches our interviews regularly, whether I'm in Las Vegas or you're in London or we're doing it remotely like this, I do very, very, very much enjoy catching up with you and chopping it up, talking boxing with you. So thank you very much, as always, for speaking to Boxing Social. And I hope to see you very soon without a laptop in the way.
That would be awesome, mate. And Rob, it's always a pleasure talking to you, my friend, and all your fans and followers on Boxing Social.
Kevin Barry, always a pleasure. Absolute gentleman. I'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
See you, mate.
Cheers, Kev.